Yeah, so yeah, okay. We can start.
Hi, I am Aurora Constantin, the PhD student in the School of Informatics, University of Edinburgh. I'm going to present my research work, which addresses the challenges that practitioners who work with children with autism encounter in a specific intervention called social story. So, one of the main difficulties that children with autism have is social interaction, and social story interventions addresses this impairment. A social story is a short story which is written in a specific style and format, meaningful for individuals with autism, which describe a situation, a skill, or a concept in terms of relevant cues and perspectives, and provides common responses. This is an example of social story, which I collected in one of my studies with the practitioners. It is addressed to a child, a girl, 7-year-old, and it intends to teach about routine, washing hands. This story, as you can see, it's very short, uses a simple language, and for enhancing the meaning, it has some pictures. So, my PhD claims that it is possible to design and implement an authoring tool that supports practitioners in social story interventions and which is evaluated by experts to be an improvement when compared to the current approaches. For that, I devised 4 research questions. First of all, I started with how do practitioners develop, present, and assess social stories. Then, can we develop computer-based technology that enables development, presentation, and assessment of social stories? Does this computer-based technology enhance the practitioner's activity of developing, presenting, and assessing social stories? And finally, because during the clarification of the methodology, concern was related to how to involve the participants, the practitioners, and other stakeholders in the design, that led to another question. What roles might practitioners, ACI, human-computer interaction, and education researchers each play in the design and evaluation process, and how might their contributions complement or differ? The research objectives for supporting these questions were to create a conceptual framework of social story interventions based on the research literature and the empirical data collected from practitioners with experience in developing social story interventions. Then to translate this conceptual framework into a set of design principles and a conceptual model for an authoring tool to support practitioners in their interventions, to build a proof of concept, an working prototype for an authoring tool that better support practitioners in these interventions compared with their tools, and to evaluate the authoring tool by comparing with current approaches, And finally, to explore what are the roles of the practitioners and researchers in this design and evaluation process. My methodology employed a hybrid of user-centered design, participatory design, and action research approaches, and involved 75 practitioners and researchers in human-computer interaction and education. User-centered design is a methodology and a philosophy which emphasize the importance of focusing on users' wants, needs, and abilities, but without necessarily directly involve these users. Whereas participatory design requires to have these users in the process of the design throughout the entire process. Action research is a way of solving a problem in a progressive manner, reflective manner, which involve usually 4 cycles, like reflecting upon the problem, designing, acting, and then observing the effect of the action. This process of designing and implementing and evaluating the tool was conducted in 4 main stages. The first stage involved literature review, first of all, related to the social stories. The next step was an initial workshop, which involved 12 practitioners with experience in social stories and employed focus group. And the results were there that practitioners usually develop social stories mainly using paper and pencil. They sometimes use Boardmaker, which is an educational tool for visual materials, but they consider this to be a little bit difficult for them. Existing technologies do not fully support their needs, but they would value technology-based application to support and enhance their work. The next step in this first stage was to explore in depth the practices in social story interventions, and for that I invited individually 4 practitioners. They were informed ahead about the role of they have to play in this study, and they prepare a social story for a particular child. And during the experiment, they wrote the social story and thought aloud, verbalized their thoughts. And at the end, they attended a semi-structured interview related to different aspects about their social story intervention in general. Based on the literature review and on the data I collected in these studies, I created a conceptual framework of the social story intervention, which is illustrated in figure 3. The main concepts there were the challenges that practitioners encounter in social story interventions, the steps they followed in these interventions, the structure of the social story, including the format, the length, and the content, and finally the goals addressed by social stories. This framework was used to extract the design principles to guide the design of the tool, and also to create a conceptual model, which finally led to a set of requirements for the authoring tool. The main challenges that I identified in this study were the workload, practitioners' workload, the customization of the social story. Usually the social stories should be highly customized to the child needs and preferences and abilities. And there is a big issue around how to do that. And finally, the third challenge was to engage the child with the social story. So these are the design principles, and the table also presents the conceptual model of the social story supporting these design principles. For example, to ease the practitioner's workload, the first design principle, I discovered that the practitioners have to be supported in writing the social stories and organizing their work, in converting the social stories to different formats like PDF or Word, to print them out. The application should come with a library of social stories so that the practitioners can inspire from existing social story when they write a new social story, or they can re-edit this existing social story and adapt for the child. The application should also come with the tools to import images from Google, or to take pictures with a webcam, or to import images from the computer. Practitioners should also have a tool to monitor and assess the progress of the child during the intervention, and also different various ways of representation of the child progress should be beneficial for easing their workload. To customize the social stories, profiles for children were considered to be necessary, where the practitioners could add related information to the child's preferences, likes, dislikes, interests, trends. Also, the application should come with various layouts for the social stories, because practitioners usually develop the social stories in different ways. You just saw one format of the social story in the example I presented before. And also, text-to-speech technology would be appreciated to have the story read aloud by the computer and have the child feel independent when going through the social story, in case that the child doesn't prefer to read himself or herself. Also, for designing for engagement, rewards for the children would be very useful at the end of the story, and the customization of the story to the familiar context for the child would be also useful. And we discovered that social stories with partial sentences would motivate the child to participate, making the social stories more interactive. These are social stories where in some sentences words are missing, and the child is required to fill in the sentence, choosing from an appropriate choice from several existing choices. In the next stage, the second stage of my study, I explored two versions of paper prototypes. So based on the results I collected in the first stage, based on the requirements, the set of the requirements I developed, I built two versions of scenario paper prototypes, and together with 10 practitioners having experience in social stories, we explored these prototypes using constructive interaction, which is a version of Think Aloud, where two practitioners were invited at the same time and asked to discuss about the prototypes and give comments, say what they like, what they don't like in the prototypes. And in the second phase of this study, we had a brainstorming where we tried to build some interfaces based on the practitioner's experience. The results in this stage were some usability problems. We discovered, for instance, that filling in the sentences is not appropriate by using a drop-down list or typing, because some of the children have motor problems. So practitioners suggested that it's better to have some choices and just click on the choice, and the sentence is automatically completed, and other problems. Then I collected a set of suggestions to improve the social story tool, authoring tool, and finally the system specification was refined based on this study. The next step was to explore the working prototype. So based on the results in the second study, I worked on a working prototype, on a system, authoring tool. And this system was explored in 3 phases with practitioners and also with experts in human-computer interaction, education, and autism. I had 70 participants here. And the method we used was cooperative evaluation, which is also a version of Think Aloud protocol. So the participants were required to verbalize their thoughts, but at the same time to feel themselves like partners in the design. So they were encouraged to ask questions if they had something unclear, and they were asked questions when some aspects of their actions or behaviors were not very clear. In order to measure if the conceptual model of the designer, in this case I was the designer, and the user matches, I tried to build so-called state diagrams, which I will explain immediately what they are. This is common diagram in software engineering, where the sequence of steps that the user is expected to follow when performing a task, are represented. So before the study, I represented this sequence of states, which I suppose the practitioners will go through during the task. And then, based on the video recordings, I represented the same diagram following the actions of the user. And then I tried to look and see if they match or not. In case that they match, that means that the obviously the design is good enough, it's intuitive, usable, and the practitioners can manage to perform their task. The results are shown in figure 4. So in most of the tasks, the conceptual models matched, the diagrams matched, except 2 tasks where we discovered some usability problems which later were solved. And the results in general were focused on discovering how easy is to use this application, what usability problems are, what bugs are in the program, and what other suggestions can be collected in order to improve the application. Finally, the 4th stage was focused on the summative evaluation, and was designed around the question, does the computer-based technology enhance the practitioner's activity of developing, presenting, and assessing social stories? So that involved a comparison. But first of all, I devised a set of dimensions to evaluate the tool. And these were based on the design principles I discovered in the first exploratory study, practitioners' workload customization and child engagement, and the other 4 were based on the usability concept, which is defined like the extent to which the users can achieve their goals in a specific context. So the further 4th dimensions were ease of use, effectiveness, efficiency, and user satisfaction. The summative evaluation was designed in 3 phases. In the first phase, I involved 12 practitioners. They were asked to go through 17 tasks. Also, cooperative evaluation was used here, like in the previous study. After each task, they were asked to answer some questions related to the difficulty and confidence based on the use of the system. When they finished the task, they were asked to fill in a well-known questionnaire which addresses the user satisfaction, called the System Usability Scale, which is a 10-question questionnaires based on 5-point Likert scale. And finally, they attended a semi-structured interview which addressed these dimensions for evaluation. In the second stage, the same practitioners were asked to write 2 stories, which were allocated to my tool, which is called ISIS, from improving social interaction through social stories. ISIS is also the name of goddess in Egyptian mythology, which is the protector of children, and also using their tool. And here I used within subject design. I had 4 conditions related to how the story was allocated to the tool and the order of writing using the tool. So sometimes they use my tool first of all and their tool secondly, and we switch this. At the end of this second stage, the practitioners were asked to answer a questionnaire and to rank my tool and their tool on the same scale from 1 to 10. The third phase involved a number of 30 practitioners in a online survey, and they were asked to rank the stories collected in the second phase and to provide the criteria they consider the most important when assessing these social stories. Now, because most of my analysis was qualitative, a common concern is related to the validity and reliability, which are the validity is related to if we measure what we're supposed to measure, and the reliability is related to the repeatability and the idea of having a stable and consistent measure. Here, to overcome these problems, I try to use a solution which is commonly used called triangulation, which is using either more sources for data called data triangulation, or more methods to collect data, methodological triangulation, or more researchers to analyze the data. So for every dimension I used various ways to collect this data. Then I use more practitioners, trying to cover different positions like teachers, learning assistant, speech and language therapists, nurses, and also in the analysis of the data, a second researcher was involved. Now the results were very encouraging. In the first table graph here, you can see that IC scored better in workload, customization, ease of use, and user satisfaction. And workload lower is better. So the lower the workload is, the better the tool is. And for the other, better means higher result. Also for the efficiency, which was measured in terms of time spent by the user to develop the story, IC is scored better. The average time for the story with ICs was 12 minutes, whereas for other tools, although they were familiar with this, was 24 minutes. And the effectiveness was also good for my tool, and that was measured in terms of tasks completed and errors made. All the practitioners completed all the tasks, and just few errors were made in performing the tasks. But maybe the most rewarding results came from the practitioners' comments, and here is one of the comments when a practitioner said that it's now pain writing the social story with my tool, knowing that there is a tool in progress which makes things much quicker and effective. And I had also another practitioner who was very excited and applauding herself, saying, "Well, this tool makes me feeling very smart, which is not my usual state, and everything is how I expected, and it's brilliant," something like that. So that was a good comment, and encouraged me to think that this application is really helpful and met the goals I established. For the next remaining time, I have to collect and analyze data from the online survey. and to determine the contributions of the different groups of researchers to the design and evaluation, and finally complete my writing. I have only 3 months, but hopefully it will be shorter, hopefully. And now the contributions of my PhD consist of a conceptual framework for social stories, which is based on empirical data and also on the research literature, and aims to inform other designers who intend to build an authoring tool for social stories or to improve the authoring tool for social stories. The design and development of a computer-based authoring tool to help practitioners in social story interventions, empirical evidence from evaluation studies that using this authoring tool improve practitioners' work in writing, assessing, and presenting social stories, and finally the exploration of the role of and contribution of different groups of participants in designing and evaluating educational tools, which will be summarized in a set of guidelines for other designers. Now I would like to show you several screenshots of my application. So this is the main initial frame, very simple, based on buttons. This is what the practitioners choose to have. I also provided them an alternative with menus, but they consider this to be much more easier. Then this is the creating social story screenshot, where the practitioners can write a sentence, add images, also import from Google, take a photo, read aloud the social story, save the social story, set their preferences there, or show the social story in a simple format for the child without all these tools to disturb the child. Here is an example where they can use individual resources. So writing a story for any raid, you can use the resources for this child and add immediately the pictures which the child prefers. This is a simple window to present the social story to the children without all the tools which are only necessary for the practitioners who write the social story. Here is an example of a social story with partial sentences and 3 choices the child has to use. This is the partial sentence completed, and the child click on the word. Here is a screenshot from the profile of the child containing the likes, dislikes, strengths and skills, and so on, and also the stories which are presented for that child. The social stories can be assessed, as I mentioned before. And here is an example of a graph with the behavior of the child. You can read there what the behavior means. What they measure is the frequency of the behavior, which represents how many times the child did not listen to the teacher during 30 minutes. And the story is called Circle Time. So you can see here how the negative behavior in this case decreases from 6 to 0. It's just an example. And thank you for your attention.
You okay to take questions?
Yes, of course.
I
Thank you.
think I can see some right.
I think it's very useful for me if you have some questions and comments also.
Yeah.
Whatever you consider useful.
Any questions?
This is really, really great. I can see how it will be helpful for the practitioners. Yeah, because when I was in my master, we also tried to do this social story. Like especially if it's for new practitioners, they need to figure out like what kind of like how to exactly write a social story and how to complete all the elements that are required. But with your application and it's just already there, like they could apply it directly. Yeah, and I think one question for me is like, do you think this will be also useful for parents? Yeah.
Yes, this is what I was thinking, that this tool, now that I focus on practitioners because during a PhD it's hard to extend your studies for many groups of users. I think that the tool might be useful even in this form for parents, but probably as a future work it's very good to extend the studies and include parents to see what else should be added in order to make it more easier to use for parents. But also I was thinking to extend the tool as a tool for researchers, because it is not clear now what features make a social story to be successful or not. It would be interesting to have to collect a lot of social stories, which are also, as you saw here, monitored, assessed, and to analyze what are the elements which might help the social story to become successful.
And those terms, can you actually have a bank with predefined stories?
Yes, so the tool comes with a set of predefined stories. Um, Usually, I just this is a proof of concept. So I just edit several stories based on topics which are frequently encountered by practitioners. But the tool can be, of course, enhanced with many social stories. The tool is there. It's very simple to add type and add different social stories in the shared library. So for the moment, I'm not very clear if it was um, it was clear in my presentation. The library of social stories is divided in two. One is the library of shared social stories, where everybody can go and take an example, and the other is the library of specific social story written by a particular practitioner for his students, where only that practitioner has access. So whenever a practitioner needs to write a social story for a specific behavior, she can go through a shared stories uh, and pick up an example if there is one there, or she can take an example from her own social stories and create it, or start from scratch, just inspiring from this social story.
Well, thank you very much. It was quite interesting. I was probably going to read through everything so I can get as much as possible. But I also wondered, like, how long did each of those stages last? I mean, you had it in different phases. Was there an overlap over them, or did you finish one completely, figured out what was happening before you moved on to next stage?
So
I know sometimes research is very messy, so I was wondering, like, it all looked very neat at each stage. So I was thinking, did you finish one completely, or you had to move forward before you are looking?
no, they overlap, and I will give you an example now. So, for instance, when I collected the data from the first exploratory study and I created a set of requirements, I already started implementing something in the system. Now, if you think of these studies like the study for the pre-design, the workshop with the practitioners, and the study where the practitioners wrote the social story, that was finished when I started implementing something. But I can say that there were two processes in parallel. Like one was the sequence of studies, which I presented here. The other one was the sequence of artifacts. So I created paper prototypes, but before the paper prototypes, I created scenarios, I created personas, I created use cases, and I use all kind of these tools which are used in software engineering. So in this process, I always iterated the system. So the system was not a linear, didn't progress in a linear way, because whenever I encounter a problem of usability or something, I went back and refined the requirements and created another scenario or whatever I considered to be useful for me to implement. But in terms of the study, I finished the first study when I started the second, and so on.
But then I wonder, did you have the same practitioners? Because at some point you had 10, 12. Were it the same set of people that went to the study? Or you had different?
Some of the
some people were constant.
There was only one practitioner who participated in all the studies,
Okay.
And few who participated in more than one.
Okay.
In the last study, I used the same 12 practitioners because I wanted, first of all, to make the practitioners familiar with the tool. That was one of the aims in the first stage, the first phase of the last stage. And then I wanted them to develop the social stories and to compare with their tools. So in order to make things to be fair, then I thought that it's good for them to familiarize with the tool and then to go through the social story and develop the social story with my tool and the other tool. But to answer your question, I didn't have the same practitioners from the beginning to the end. Some of them participated in the design. Some of them participated in the design phase and also in evaluation. Very few, two or three, two probably, and most of them participated only in one study, because the agenda of practitioners, teachers, people who work in school, yes, is very busy. It was a big challenge to bring them in my study at the right moment. That was one of the problems, because they were willing to participate, but they were not available. When I had the paper prototypes, not all the participants who participated in the first study were available. Then when I had the working prototype, I couldn't have all of them. They said, okay, we can come later if you want, but then if I had enough participants, I just, yes,
So
moved to the next stage.
did you have a particular criteria, like you were teaching, most of them were in schools?
Sorry?
Were they in schools, most of them? The practitioners, like were they in schools or just practitioners generally?
All the practitioners work in schools.
Okay.
Some of them were permanent teachers or speech and language therapists in schools. Some of them were a member of so-called VTSS, which is Visiting Teachers for Social Support. They are also teachers or nurses or speech and language therapists in a permanent position, but they go to different schools to support teachers there with some children's special needs. And they have different groups for different needs, and of course I contacted the group for autism. Yes, so all of them were active practitioners.
My last question. Sorry, I'm curious. But I wonder, like, if it was more of a participatory sort of thing. You said it was like an action research participatory. So how much of it would we say it's, I mean, how much control did you take of the process as the researcher compared to them doing it as the practitioners? A lot of, I mean, it seemed like it was a lot of participation, but then, would I say, how do you think you managed it? If I can learn from you, like, okay, how much of it is my own work? Because you also say you went forward, you went back. Like going back meant you figured out something as a researcher. So did you just go with your own decisions and what you thought, or was it more of what the practitioners who are the ones?
So I didn't say that it was fully participatory design, because it wasn't in the way they define the participatory design now. I thought that it was, in terms of participation, somewhere between user-centered design and participatory design. And why? Because it was more than a user-centered design implies. User-centered design usually focuses on the artifacts, on the usability of the system, whereas participatory design focus on the users. So in my design, I focus more on the users, without having them there for each stage or each decision, because they were not available. So the difference between participatory and user-centered design is the difference between, I said participatory first, so designing with users versus designing for users. So I think that I was somewhere in between. I designed with users, but I couldn't have the users every time with me. When they were not there, I had some researchers to consult in some decisions, experts in human-computer interaction, in education, or even in autism. I use action research because action research also implies a change, creating a change and observing this change. And what I wanted to do was not only to support the practitioners with this tool, but also to inform the practice from the theory, from the research, and also to extract from the practice and inform the theory. So this is where the action research was involved. So this is why I said that all these three approaches were used and combined in this methodology.
Aurora, how did you manage to have access to the researchers? That you have funding, basically, or you like
No,
volunteers?
nobody was
How they-
paid.
They
Nobody was paid. And I read somewhere that it's not good to pay the practitioners, the teachers.
What are you talking about? The
Because
practitioner or the research?
I'm talking about the researchers.
The researchers were my colleagues and people I met in different contexts in my university or in Dundee University. So I didn't even thought about rewarding them, paying them. So one was my second supervisor, for instance. She offered her help. Another were her former PhD students in the University of Dundee, who are experts in human-computer interaction and also work on projects in autism, and other collaborators there in Dundee. Somebody was a researcher from Dundee who was interested to discuss with me about my work, and he had some research in autism. And when I asked him, he was very willing to come, even in Edinburgh. I couldn't ask about that. I mean, it was not the question of paying these people.
I mean, just you made a comment about paying the practitioners in the sense that like paying your research participants. I think it's not entirely wrong, depending on how you go about. You know, you said you read somewhere that you said you shouldn't pay the participants.
Yes, I read
on the
some,
contents
yes.
of the research. And
Yes, I read somewhere that not all the participants, but the teachers. It referred to the teachers that when you create some tool for them, they said that it's not nice. I didn't ask the practitioners if they want to be rewarded with money because the tool itself was intended to be a reward for their work. So yes, I didn't think of that. I was lucky. I didn't need money.
Okay.
yeah.
No more questions asked? Thanks very much, Aurora. That was really
Thank
interesting.
you. I hope it was not very long.
No, we are ready for